to Beyond the Ring, a podcast that covers all things in the stock show industry from the informative to the insane, starring Ryan Rash.
At times, my behavior can be completely embarrassing, but is also highly entertaining.
And Dale Hummel.
Trust the process, even when it seems like it's not processing.
Now on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Ring. This is Dale Hummel, along with co-star Ryan Rash.
Hello, hello, hello.
Ryan, I know what you want to talk about. I know.
Yeah, since this is take two.
This is the first time we've ever had to have a take two.
Like, we've never had to do this before. This is like worse than the first episode. I don't know what is wrong with you.
No.
Dale, I blame you.
This was your internet issue.
No, it was not me. It was not me. Everything was working fine on my end. You and Clifton told me that it was my fault. I don't believe it.
So for the listeners that are unaware of what's going on today, and I apologize, this is Wednesday evening. We did attempt to record this morning, and it
did not work well for Dale or Clifton. It was working perfectly fine for me.
There was a 5+ second delay, Ryan. It was not working. It was terrible.
There was no delay on my end. I don't know what I'm telling y'all. I am hearing everything fine.
Yes, you did mention that a few times. It took me, after you said it, it would wait about 10 seconds, then I'd hear it. But other than that, it was fine.
I don't know. But anyway. So, but see, it's a good thing because new news has happened.
There is much more news.
There is new news. So
I think it was a sign. This was
literally, it was God intervening.
Yeah.
I mean, so sleepy, creepy, slow Joe Biden, POTUS, whatever y'all want to call
your
him
president.
He is all of the United States president currently. I hate to tell you, but so which I don't know what stupid Democrat wanted him at a rally, but somebody in Colorado, I guess, wanted him there.
Campaign.
I do not know why, but this is what happens. So he goes out there and he says that his son Bo died in the Iraq War. That is not what happened. His son made it back from the war, and then he died of brain cancer. So I again, if I was anybody that had any power in the Democratic Party, I'd be like, y'all put him in a bubble and leave him in the White House till after the midterms.
It is a mess. A mess. No question.
I mean, the other day it was, I have 2 words for you. Made in America. That would be 3 words, sir.
It's endless. And these are just little ignorant things that maybe don't affect things on the world stage, but in all essence, it does, because he's just not coherent. And when he does, he's lying about something. It is a absolute mess. It looks like they're hitting Fetterman pretty hard right now for refusing to debate, refusing to be able to take questions without assistance.
Well, even the liberal lady that interviewed him said after the interview, he did not understand. It was very hard for him to understand my questions, etc. So, like, when that happens, that's not good.
No, that's Miss NBC speaking there. She said even the small talk before the interview was bad, and then they had to put it up on a teleprompter of some sort so he could read the question because he couldn't comprehend when she was asking the question, which I don't understand. I'm sure all strokes are different. I'm not trying to belittle that whatsoever, but we really...
No, I'm not belittling the man's stroke or anything like that, but the fact is he does not need to serve in the Senate because he's not well.
I don't think he needed to serve before he had an issue. I think he was a train wreck before then in terms of his qualifications.
You're just so negative. Just because he chased somebody down with a gun and held them.
He's never accomplished anything. Lived in his mother's basement or his parents' basement, and I don't know what he did. Nothing.
You're just so negative.
Nothing. That's what he did. Nothing.
You're so negative.
I'm out. But I hope Oz just whoops the shit out of him.
Doesn't kill any more puppies.
He didn't. That was false. That was fake news.
Anyway, but that is one of the 4 toss-up Senate races. It's Pennsylvania, Georgia, which again, I don't even know how this is close. I don't know the other man running. I've never heard of him. I understand he's an African American as well. And I do not mean this to sound racist at all. But like when I heard Herschel Walker, an African American, all races hero, but especially an African American hero, was running for Senate in Georgia, that
I'm with you.
is all black, pretty much. I thought this was a slam dunk.
I thought it was over. I was excited. This is great. There's no way they're not going to.
And he did such a good job at the Republican National Convention in his speech. Like, I don't understand how this is close.
And this Mr. Warnock, who he's running against, this man ran over his ex-wife, and they're giving him a pass. She was on television with the cops' personal body cam. They ran it the other night. She's crying and talking about how he ran her over and how he is basically a piece of shit, which I grant it's an ex-wife. I understand all that, but it appears as though he has a lot of issues. And again, the media is just glossing over everything. And that's a problem. But it is a race for the democracy, our democracy. And I strongly, strongly encourage everyone listening, you have to get out and vote in the midterm. And if you live in North Carolina, Ohio, Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, or Georgia, go and grab your neighbor, get your cousin. You gather as many people as you can up. When it's a midterm, I think there's going to be more emphasis placed on turnout than there would be on a presidential election year. So please, it's if we don't take back the House and Senate, and it's going to be very, very close in the Senate, I have hope that we're going to take back the House from a conservative standpoint. But if
when that happens, I'm going to be drunk for a week because that means Pelosi is gone.
I don't know that we'll ever hear from her again.
I know. Won't that be wonderful?
I'm a little worried she just might up and die afterwards.
Oh, it'd be fine with me.
That is very mean.
Which I have one other political thing to talk about, but we didn't have any non-political things to talk about. But since all you people out here listening, or the large majority of you, especially you males, are all football fanatics, I want you to know that the woke, stupid ass shit has got y'all too. Did you know that, Dale?
I did hear. I heard something. I forgot what it was now.
So on Monday Night Football, Troy Aikman was color commentating, and he said that it was time to take the dresses off. And I'm assuming that I mean, I don't know what that comment was made at, but I'm just inferring that he thought they were playing not rough enough or pansy-like or something. He said it's time to take the dresses off, and now everybody wants him fired.
I did not hear that. I did not.
Yes.
And it's gaining traction?
Yes.
Oh,
so,
my. Oh,
yeah.
my. So I did
there
have...
you go.
I did have, I guess it's political still. I did have a listener that messaged me about the illegal immigrant issue. And
there is no illegal immigrant issue.
Okay, the non-illegal immigrant issue.
Joe Biden was on over an hour interview with somebody, and it was not mentioned.
Didn't get mentioned. No, I get it. So
the border is closed.
A few weeks ago, I questioned how are these people that are coming in through our southern border illegally asking for asylum.
Sir. The border is closed.
Whatever it is, the people that show up, okay, that are here, how do they live? How do they? We're not allowed to employ them because we would be breaking the law because they do not have a work permit. They're not a U.S. citizen. But it looks like once they apply for asylum, 6 months later they're allowed to apply for a work permit. Well, what are they doing in between? What are we supposed to do? I need employees. I would be happy to hire some people if I can do it legally.
I don't think you can hire them legally, sir.
Well, then how are they going to live? We're obviously supporting them somehow.
In the hotels.
Live in the hotels, order room service. Yeah, that's great. You suspect that's tax dollars?
I'm sure it is. Oh, and this is more political, but did you know that they're going to investigate DeSantis? They think he illegally used illegal funds to fly people to Martha's Vineyard.
Illegal funds. Now, what would that mean?
I don't know. Misuse of funds, illegal funds, however you want.
The way I look at it, if he gets them out of Florida, he's no longer paying their bill. That use whatever funds you can to get them out of there. If you're going to save the taxpayers.
They are now investigating DeSantis's use of funds to fly them to Martha's Vineyard, which he only sent a couple. Abbott sent like the most. Why aren't they investigating him?
I have no idea, but the politicization.
And Abbott's in a governor's race. You would think they would want to investigate him more.
No, I think because he is the one that's the most threatening on the presidential ticket, DeSantis right now. That's why.
Well,
I'm very, very concerned about all the politicization of the FBI, the DOJ, the CIA, everything, the IRS, all of that is to the point where I can't even imagine it's happening in our country at all. So we got to talk about this briefly. Hunter Biden's being hopefully brought up on some tax evasion or tax issues and
lies,
purchasing a gun, lying about some form he filled out to buy a gun. So crap that really doesn't even matter relative to taking all the money from the Chinese and the Russians while his father was vice president and having influence and access to his father as vice president. None of that that's all documented and absolutely critical that needs to be brought out in the open further and legally the family needs to be held accountable. Instead, we're going for some tax issue that'll be a fine, and he lied about using drugs on his firearm application. Total bullshit, all of it, and I'm done. I'm tired of it, and the politicization of the control that the Democrats have over all of those agencies right now is unfathomable to me. I don't understand it. I'm not willing to accept it, and that is why we have to get out and vote. If we can take back the House and we can control the Senate, these things will be more likely brought to attention and held accountable.
Well, that would be because they'll be in control of what gets investigated.
Yes. Right now, it's up to the district attorney in Delaware, whether he follows through on the charges. I don't even know. It's even if he does get charged for this, it's nothing compared to what he should be charged.
Well, you just think he should be hung for treason.
Yes, and I better stop there. It's terrible.
I agree with you that the problem is that and I don't know how this works. I mean, I do know how it works, but it fathoms me how it works. But the DOJ, when it comes to, people like the president's son, high political officials, all that stuff, they normally I guess they just handle it all with kid gloves unless the party in the power is having these investigations in Senate and congressional committee hearings and all this, putting pressure and putting it in the spotlight to make them act.
Yes, it does appear that way.
And again, I get how it works, but that's just
but how much more evidence do we need of all the connections and all the money that came through China to Hunter's account and filtered into Joe's account? I mean, I don't know how the laptop is full of emails. Connect the dots. His business partners tried to get back in contact with the FBI. He's interviewed once years ago, and they said they'd get back to him. And there's so much evidence out there that they're just totally ignoring it. I don't know how much more you could bring to light. It's just not, but it's all there. I'm very frustrated, Ryan.
I can say.
Okay, let's go to something more positive.
Okay, what is your positive?
Do you have your computer in front of you with the top 10 pulled up?
No, because you haven't let me finish current events.
Oh, go ahead.
You're missing the most important thing that's happened. Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, I did admit that is positive. Yep, that was the first thing we talked about this morning.
Yeah, I know, but so since some of you may not know, but Tulsi Gabbard is an Iraq War hero veteran. She is a former congresswoman from Hawaii, which is the most liberal state in the world. And as of yesterday, she was a Democrat. And when she won her congressional seat, all this other stuff, she was the new it girl for the Democratic Party. for real, she gets elected and she becomes the vice chair of the DNC, like overnight.
She was the golden child.
Right. She ran for president, and I don't remember what episode, if it was the Beyond the Circus or whatever, but she was one of the 16 that made it to the first Democratic presidential debate. And I did comment that she was the only person up there that made a lick of sense. And even when I disagreed with what her policy stance was, I still found value or intelligence in explaining why she stood for that. And I commented on Facebook and probably on here. She does not stand a chance because she makes too much sense. So there's no way in hell she's going to win. So she doesn't get a lot of traction in the Democratic deal, but Trump gets elected. So the day after Trump gets elected, she goes to meet with him, particularly about regime wars, which, in case y'all want to know what that is, Ukraine and Russia, that's a regime war. But long story short, then she was demonized by everything Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton claimed that she was a Russian asset, you name it, whatever. Horrible long thing. So she comes out yesterday, says she's leaving the Democratic Party. I don't think she claimed she signed up for the Republican Party, but this afternoon she's on the campaign trail with Republicans trying to get them elected. But the whole big point of this story is yesterday on the 5.
Time out. Do you have a prediction that's coming here?
No, I didn't predict it. Gutfeld did this.
Oh, okay.
But yesterday on the 5, which is my favorite Fox News talk show, Gutfeld and all of them were talking about this, and Greg Gutfeld said, we all know the reason she left the Democratic Party is because she's going to be Trump's VP. And like, you could tell by his face when he said that, he's like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. And nobody, like everybody else at the table, had this look and they just moved on to another topic.
That's very, very unusual in that case.
Right. And I find it, what I find interesting about it is I'm still not sure that Trump can run and win. I think he's going to wait and see after the midterms and crunch some numbers. His ego can't take another loss, but I don't know if his ego will let him sit out of it. But if the people listening will remember, I stated emphatically on this podcast, on social media, that when Trump was running for re-election, he needed to tell Mike Pence, thank you, you did a great job, we appreciate your service, your time is over, and pick a damn woman. He didn't do that, and I think that is a big reason. His problem with women voters is the reason he got beat this last time. And so if he does pick Tulsi Gabbard, if he does run and he does pick Tulsi Gabbard as his VP, I think it's a brilliant move because, you know, it shows that he doesn't need a puppet to run with him. It is a woman. She is a strong, independent woman who has different ideas than him. And I think it will help greatly, not only with the women vote, but also with the independents, because independents like ideas from both sides of the thing, and she obviously is the best choice for that. So there you go.
So I cannot identify with this nearly as well as you, but if I'm a woman out there and Trump's running for president and I severely dislike him for various reasons, him bringing in a woman as a vice president doesn't change my vote. I'm sure it will change some, and I think everything you said is correct, that it's going to help him, but I would assume there's a large portion of the female population that just despise Trump, and it is not going to matter who he brings in as a VP.
I think it can't hurt.
No, I agree. And she technically...
The last thing he needs is another old white man.
Yes.
Now, DeSantis is a different thing. He's not old, whatever, but like the last thing he needs is another Pence type person.
Now, she did declare herself an independent, I believe. Not a Republican, but an independent at the moment. All that can change. But I think you're onto something with what Gutfeld said. I really believe that.
You could just say, "Oh shit, I wasn't supposed to say that," but
I have
there it
not
is.
seen that anywhere yet, though, other than what you're saying. No.
It was on the 5 episode yesterday. I'm sure they're not broadcasting it if he wasn't supposed to put it out there. So
You would have thought some news agencies would have picked up on it.
yeah, but there you go.
I am good with current events, and you can now.
Okay. Yeah. Now, okay. Well, I had
Now don't forget to read the states.
Yeah. Well, this isn't the one I had earlier anyway, but I will read the states. So we're going to do the top 10 overall lamb because I don't think we've done a lamb one in a long time. And in first is Piper Liska of Yuma, Arizona, and she has a perfect score of 510 points.
Okay, while we're on that, perfect score. So what if another person gets a perfect score?
If there are multiple perfect scores, like there are in the goats, if they all stay at a perfect score, nobody gets more points from Kansas City, Louisville, or Phoenix because they're double point shows. Whoever has accumulated the most total points in that species, not just from their 10 highest shows, will win.
And with the 3 national level shows coming up, they're likely to gather some more points.
Right. But second is Rose Davies from Filer, Idaho, 485. Third is Adele Simpson, Eager, Arizona, 408. Next is Montgomery Bertram from Wheeling, West Virginia, 395. Lakin Ruxtel, Wamego, Kansas, 371. Paisley Carlson, Orland, California, 370. Zane Downey, Whitehall, Montana, with 368. Gabriel Rout, Carmel, Indiana, 355. Blake Holmes, Vernal, Utah, 345. Addison Zerzbach, Roseburg, Oregon, 345. And Claire Murrieta, Stanfield, Arizona, 324.
That is a good set of kids. I know a couple of those, and I think maybe you should recalculate to make sure they're not a little higher.
Yeah, well, my favorite's not going to win, but it'll be fine.
Well, that's good.
I'm a big fan of Zane Downey. I judged him in Montana twice, and I'm a big fan of his. But he's not going to win because he's too far behind right now. But
he can't make up the ground.
Oh, I'm sure he could, but I don't know if there's enough shows in Montana.
Well, he could go to Kansas
This time
City.
of year.
He could go to Louisville, and he could go to Arizona.
But anyhow, so
I do know that Lakin and Paisley are both at Kansas City as we speak. So they're making an effort. I'm going early in the morning. I'm leaving here in a few hours. Okay, with
it's
that,
all my fault. I'm sure that you're not there right now.
No, it's not your fault. It has nothing to do with you. Just needing to get a few things done here and going to leave in the morning. It'll be good. You know what I get excited about there.
I do not even. Oh, the haunted house.
Oh, a long time ago they used to be incredible. Now they're still good, but not as good. And Ryan, we need to own some of those. They have a line of hundreds of people, and it costs a small fortune to go through them. It's crazy.
I realize I've been through a lot of them. It
crazy.
A small fortune. But before you do your waterboard duty, that will feed right into the main topic. Yes, I know. You're so excited.
I am.
I would like to give a couple shout outs to BTRJLA sponsors. The first one is Brock Farms Angus. They are having the Brock Farms Angus Cattle Harvesting Opportunity Sale October 17th. It's on SC Online Sales, and their videos and pictures are posted. So please go check out Brock Farms Angus Cattle Harvesting Sale. And then our latest national award sponsor, Reprologics. I think this is their last podcast spot, but anyway, they're a full service cattle and small ruminant reproduction company headquartered in Fort Scott, Kansas. Their goal is to provide customer service with the highest quality services at competitive prices. They combine their knowledge with expertise in reproductive physiology and state-of-the-art equipment and technologies to maximize the performance of their clients' cattle, deer, sheep, and goats in the reproductive fields. They are setting up things right now, very active. My sister Callie works there, so please support Reprologics and give them a shout out. Look at their Facebook. They've got a brand new website. Thank you, Reprologics, for your support.
You know what I did today? You know what I did today to support them?
I think you gave them some cow embryo reproductive work.
I spoke to 2 of the representatives, one of them being Callie, so that one really doesn't count. But yeah, I'm working on giving them some of my most problem donor goat females and probably a female cow or 2.
Lovely.
That'll be good. And I was upfront that these donors that I have, they've been flushed. I've tried to natural kit them. They're pretty well exhausted, and they're still willing to give it a try on the IVF side. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to working with them. And it should be good.
Wonderful.
Thank you, all of the BTR JLS sponsors. Episode sponsor goes to ShowFresh H2O. American made, scientifically documented, simple, and economical. Your cost versus benefit is off the charts. Remember, as we talk about different things today, this is going to tie into our topic. Hydration and fill on these animals makes a big difference when they go into the ring, and having the opportunity or the toolbox of ShowFresh H2O and encouraging or allowing those animals to consume more water to regulate some of these things, it's a no-brainer. Need to do it. Don't tie your hands behind your back and you get to a show and these animals won't drink. There's nothing you can do at that point. So your local show supply trailer, swampfox.com. Support ShowFresh H2O. We appreciate their sponsorship. One other sponsor today, a co-sponsor, we could say, Sadler Ranches. Production sale, including commercial bulls, Hereford Angus females and bulls, I guess you should say, and black baldy cows with sex pregnancies inside them, a whole pile of them. Should be great real-world cattle. And as a bonus, Ryan, they have some of my Argentine genetics kind of wandering through there, and a couple might even make it into the sale. So we should probably go and support that, Ryan. Would you like to go?
Support them because Dale needs more money.
Yes, I need to sell more cattle. I have another group from Canada coming down next week, or in 2 weeks, I should say. So we'll have more Argentine cattle here shortly, we hope. With that, it leads us into our main topic, from Waterboy to Ryan's topic that he's had on the list for over a year, I think.
Yeah.
And it's a good one when I stopped and thought about it. The title topic is Fill It Up. In this is in regards to what, Ryan?
I just thought that we should go and give just a little knowledge or try to explain what we think the ideal fill in terms of show ring aesthetic is for the different species. And the first thing that I want to say, like just a general tip, and Dale's going to argue with me because he argued with me this morning, but I'm right and he's wrong. We don't spend very many days at a show in the show career of an animal. They spend most of the time at home in your barns. And we did this in my little camp, in my little group. And so I never understood why people don't try these different tips and tricks and the different products that you can use to adjust fill on show animals, why you don't ever test them out at home, see what the results are, see what it does, etc. And granted, an animal is going to change when they get to a show, but you still know what works on that individual animal and kind of to the degree and amount of the stuff that needs to be done and used and all this other stuff. So you can adjust accordingly. And I don't think many people do that. I'm being real honest.
I can't imagine they don't. I believe more people are doing this than not. If they are,
I do not. I think you're wrong.
You absolutely need to be doing so. Period.
I mean, you need to test all this stuff out at home and try. So I'm just putting that out there. But
yes.
Carry on, Dale. I'm sure
you
you will carry the rest of this topic because this is like your favorite thing ever.
Why
you had this on the list for over a year and you never wanted it beyond me.
Well, do you remember once we get so far in the text messages, I never seem to go back until you retext it to me, and you haven't done that for a while. So when it came in this time, I noticed you kind of put some organization to it this last time, and that was great.
Never mind. I'm not going to argue with you. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about it. It's interesting because we always, what we want in the show ring, obviously trends and so forth change. And I think part of the change is the things that we can impact within 48 hours or so before the show. And that's their body fill or the ruminant fill or their intestinal fill that is going to create more or less body. And Ryan, we talk about that underline and how that ties into balance and all of those things. And I would say with most judges, it's fairly important. Would you agree?
Oh, I think Phil is one of those things that it affects the way your animal looks in terms of balance. I think it definitely affects how they move. I think it also in some ways can definitely affect how muscular they look as well. So I think Phil affects everything.
Yeah, and the muscle's not changing. It's just the look or the illusion or the perception that you give. Let's go back. And Ryan, I know you're old enough and you won't want to admit to it, or you know enough about history. And let's start with hogs just a little bit. And I want to touch on some of the things that we've gone through. But in the 70s in hogs, and I don't remember these.
I was not even alive in the 70s, sir.
I've looked at pictures. I've seen many pictures, especially from the National Barrow Show. What do you think a hog looked like, a champion show hog in the 70s, Ryan?
I don't know, but I can remember when I was very, very small and when I first started the show, and before that, they were very, very tall and very, very long and very, very narrow.
And no flank, zero. Hard body. How much fill you think we're putting in them then?
None.
Zero. I don't think they saw feed or water there was a period of time before they went in the show ring that was pulled away, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so we went from that to extreme, and they were hard doing. There wasn't enough fat on these animals or enough side or anything to make bacon, and bacon's one of the high dollar cuts. So we had a lot of, I guess, pushback on that type of hog. They took it the other way in the 80s, and they used hogs that literally their sheath was dragging the ground. I mean, they were wide bodies, they were small framed, and they were big body. I mean, you slopped, you did everything you could to get as much fill as you physically could on these animals. Went too far that way in the hog world.
I do remember those very well.
I mean, those were little bitty midgets. I mean, fat, belly dragging midgets. So they thought, well, we went too far. I think in the 90s, and there's some pictures of some of the boars and the boar studs from the 90s that I could still go up and pull. Pretty much when the Pietrins came in and we started using Pietrin cross hogs, they went back almost. They were probably a little sounder and a little more muscular.
No, it's pretty. I bet it was pretty close to what you were talking about there. I remember
back
those
to the 70s.
vividly.
I mean, those you could count their ribs and their flank. There was no flank, zero. I mean, we really went back, and again here, I mean, we're going from a trend where you're pushing feed and water and getting that fill as much as you can in the 80s to all of a sudden drying those animals out as much in terms of their bodies you physically can in the 90s. And I think as the past 20 years, it's moderated. Would you say? I don't think we've gone overly extreme anyway. I think we're here in the past probably 5 years. We've put quite a bit of fill on them. We're starting to take just a little bit out. But there were a few years they were trying to put as much belly on them when they went in the ring as you physically could. Would you say that we've pulled back a touch from that, Ryan?
Probably a little bit.
I mean, depending on the hog, some of them you're going to continue to want to put as much as you physically can, but they're not quite as extreme in that as they were. You would probably find this side more interesting, the cattle, and you've seen a lot of trends or are familiar with them. I call the 50s and 60s cattle. I describe them or the legendary Tom Burke describes them as baby beef. And I remember those pictures from Houston, Ryan, where they have them in the straw, and they look like they had
straws like up to their back.
Yeah, they had no legs, and so those were big belly.
Funny story. There was an auctioneer, and I am so ashamed that I cannot remember his name right now. But anyway, he did like the vast majority of the Houston Livestock Show steer auctions. Mm-hmm. And he put together a photo book. And long story short, I got a signed copy of that photo book, even though he didn't auctioneer my steer. But and it was just so cool to look at all those pictures of the steers that he auctioned.
You can pretty much follow the trend by looking through that picture book.
Literally.
That's interesting. And then, okay, let's go to the 80s. There we went to hip height, and everything had to be taller the better. And if we were shallower bodied, did we look taller?
Yes.
Yes. And I'm going to say we went from filling them up in the 50s and 60s. I don't know where they were in the 70s, but the 80s, we dried them out a little bit again, and we made them, I mean, big. Some key influence, I'd say, was coming into play then. And we made them big, long-legged, and pretty hard flanked.
I'm not disagreeing with any of that.
No, did you show some of those?
I showed some very tall animals in the late 80s. Yes.
And then we started coming back down and the trend's kind of gone another way. What about some of our female shows the past few years? I think some of these cattle, for me, maybe don't have enough true muscle, maybe a little fat, but what we do have that I like is a great big old body cavity and belly on them. And I like it because I relate it to ease of fleshing and low maintenance and low feed costs. But these bellies aren't from that, probably, are they, Ryan?
Probably not.
No, I'm thinking there's a lot of feed.
Are we ever going to talk about how to fill one up, or are you just going to talk about the trends of?
No, I think I like the history of the show ring. I enjoy that. Let's talk. What
That's
species?
not the topic, sir.
Yeah, we're talking about fill in there. What species would you like to start with on how to fill?
Anyone that will get you on topic, you go ahead. Whatever one excites you the most, sir.
I would probably. I'm okay. Yeah, you won't like this. Let's talk about frame sheep.
Oh, lovely.
No, I think they're still not. Well, I don't know where they are. They're big animals. They're very big. So we may not be putting a lot of fill on. But if we go to market lambs and market goats, I think we can classify those together.
Okay.
Where would you say fill needs to be? And would you agree, first off, market lambs and goats were probably close?
Yeah, I think that most of the tactics or things used in filling market lambs and goats are probably very similar. Yes.
And how full? Where do you want them in the ring?
I think that the problem is especially, and I see this more in goats than sheep, but for some reason, like there are different. I guess in my experience, regardless of species, is that yes, they need to have as much water as they can and be hydrated and things like that, but water always seems to sink the belly down, in my opinion. And there are other products that you can use to get fill up high to make them appear, there's always that pocket. And I don't know what the technical name for that pocket is on the side. That
right behind the ribs and below.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what the technical term of that is. I don't even know.
Up high.
I don't know if it was, but that one always needs to be filled out. Well, water is normally not going to fill that right there. But, there are other things that can. But I think the biggest problem I see in goats throughout the shows is a lot of times they get them so full they appear pot-bellied or pus-gutted, I guess would be a term. And that detracts from their silhouette. I think it is much more important to, have them where they're full enough that they're not high in their flank and stuff like that. And that underline is level. But to get that fill up high, you're going to have to use different tactics.
Well, I'm gonna get a lot of pushback, I'm sure, on this one, Ryan. I'm sure. Not from you, but just from some listeners. So with that said, and I'm going to relate to market lambs and goats, and there are some things that are not ethical that are done and definitely drops that flank. But let's try to stay on the legal side of thing or the moral side of things. And I think that the flank is as hard to change as anything. It makes it difficult. I mean, we get them real full, we'll drop it. We've got to push the limits on almost too full before we can drop that very much. And I like the fact that you brought this up, and I hear it all the time, that water is going to help down low and drop that center belly. And let's think about it. When the water goes in, it's going to set in the rumen, then it's going to progress its way through the digestive tract. Water is going to be relatively heavy. Gravity is going to keep it low. I can accept that to a certain degree. But biologically speaking, when you talk about or others talk about, well, here's what we're going to use to fill up high. Here's what we're going to use to drop the flank. Here's what we're going to use to drop the center body. When I think of it from a biological standpoint, we have feed in that rumen. We have obviously feed in the intestinal tract. We can put water in. We can put more feed. We can do things. If we want to expand that rumen up high in that little spot you're talking about, Ryan, behind the rib and below the loin, if we put something in there to feed the microbes of the rumen and we create more fermentation, that's going to be a gassy type fill. The problem is, I don't know if you remember, Ryan, or ever participated in this, and I can't say that I did personally, but I can remember they used to give a lot of cattle carbonated soda or beer to try to fill them up. And they sometimes, What would happen if it went too far?
then it causes bloat.
Yeah, and I think anytime we're playing with that, we're playing with fire a little bit. But I don't know. For example, if you feed them hay, most people say, well, that'll help fill up high more than what water will do. And I'm not arguing any of this, but I can assure you, I'm not sure today when I think about it, and I think about the biology of it. If a human needs to move things through their digestive tract, usually fiber is going to do that. Hay would be a fiber source that's going to move things through the digestive tract. That's not going to do as much necessarily for your upper fill. So I don't know. I'm not saying that we can't do things to increase the rumen gas population. I'm not saying we can't drop a belly with water, but it's an art, and it's a situation where I think that we pretend to know more than what we really do. And I find it very difficult to, if an animal's tight flanked, it's going to be hard to change that without getting them extremely full or extremely fat or something like that. So I don't know, Ryan. In the sheep and market goat thing, we talk about giving some mineral oil every few hours to try to push things back further to fill that flank or that lower posterior part of the body in terms of getting the feed from the rumen back into the intestine. And if I just lay out the biology of how the anatomy is, we've got our big old rumen and we've got the rest our small and large intestine. It's hard for me to say that I can manipulate when food or feedstuffs and water is going to be in a certain place in that digestive tract. Is there any logic in that?
So you're telling me that you're telling our listeners that there's nothing you can do. It just is what it is.
No, I think
that's what that says.
No, I think you can fill them up and you can empty them out. But where we fill them up for the most part, other than I do, anytime we put a lot of fill in them, especially water, I'm with you. We can drop that center body. But beyond a little bit, I think it's fill or it's not fill, and it's going to kind of go where it goes. And I know people are going to disagree with this, but
I disagree.
Biologically, you have no case. You can't explain how you're going to manipulate how that rate of passage is going to work. We can speed up rate of passage. We can maybe slow down rate of passage, but we can't say, hey, let's stop in our lower flank or in the large intestine right there. That's gonna fill that lower flank and just hold on until we come out of the show. That
I agree with what you're saying, but you're not making it.
So how would you, if you're going to try to drop a flank, how are you going to do that? What are you going to use?
I think dropping flank is the best thing that we've ever come up with is just water. But again, talking about fill, I wasn't necessarily, the flank is the hardest thing to do legally. And maybe we should have said that from the beginning.
Maybe.
But the flank is the hardest thing to make drop with filling agents or stuff like that. But there are things like, and again, so you're telling me that when you go to Kansas City tomorrow and you're getting your clients' goats ready, that you're not going to drench with anything but water?
I'm not, I can't control what they drench with, but if it was my
so you don't use keep it on, you don't use any other type of things in your drench at all.
We use 90% of the time water. If I have a difficult one to drench and they just won't take the drench gun, I will use a Gatorade or a mild electrolyte. And I'm doing more for hydration. I can usually get them to eat enough on the fill side. I will adjust fill to a certain degree on water and feed. And a lot of times if I've got one that sometimes those just hard bellied ones, I will drench pretty hard right before they go in the ring, and I will drench with water. So yeah, no, keep it on. I'm not needing to pick on the supplements here, but no, from the time we've begun showing, very, very few supplements of any sort like that have we used at all.
See, and this is where I use supplements the most and think they work.
And the reason that I'm not saying that they don't work. I just haven't used them because I think about the large intestines. The only thing that we can possibly do is fill it up to drop the flank a little bit or the posterior portion of that body. And I can't control how we get more feed in there and to get it to stay in there versus being excreted or getting, I don't have the knowledge to move it around within there. In my mind, how we can do it. We can fill them up and it's going to expand everything everywhere, or I can pull it out and it's going to take some out everywhere, if that makes any sense. And I can I can do more. If we give a lot of water, we don't get that upper bloat that we talked about. We're going to get more drop in the center belly. And if I feed a lot of hay, especially an alfalfa hay or real rich hay, I'm taking a chance that we're going to get too much fermentation. We're going to get too full up top, but we can do some of that. And I will do some of that. Alfalfa hay, grass hay, feed, and water would be 90% of what I will do tomorrow.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it works. I could be totally wrong. But I really don't think there's a magic formula. Let's do A, B, and C, and the shows at a certain time, and that will allow for more feed stuff in that particular portion of the digestive tract. I'm not buying into that.
Again, that's why I stated at the very beginning, you have to try different things at home because every animal is different. You have to know how long it takes for it to get to the spot that you need for the things that need to be filled out to be filled. That was the whole purpose. But Dale doesn't think any of that works, so we're going to move on to another species.
No, I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm very, very confident. I'm very concerned with getting the fill correct. What I'm saying is I can control how much fill they have. I can't necessarily control what part of the body. It's either full or average or it's not. I can control that and will. And some of them just always have too much body and too much rumen gas and too much rumen fill in general, or intestinal fill, whatever you want to talk about, that will pull back pretty hard to decrease it. So I think the fill is very important. I think you can control it. I just don't think we're going to look at this animal an hour before the show or 2 hours before the show or whatever and say, okay, we're going to give it A, B, and C because we want to fill out this portion. I'm not buying it. Can't go there.
Okay,
let's go to cattle. Give us some cattle guidance.
I'm still just blown away by this last thing. Anyway, so in cattle, I think there are several things that can help. I do think that the one thing, and I will tell you, we pump, we drench, we do lots of things, and you have to make sure that that's within the rules, but most jackpot shows don't have any rules. I will tell you that we try to get them to eat and drink and fill up on their own. And when you show in Texas in the summer and it's 100 plus degrees, that's not going to happen. I think things that work are if you are allowed to pump at a show in cattle. I do think Sprite is something that helps fill. Again, you have to know, depends on what size your animal is, all these other things. We normally put 2 of the big bottles of Sprite and and fill the rest of the bucket up with water, and that's our go-to for an animal at a summer show. And I think that
with that, obviously the water is going to fill the rumen. It's going to drop the belly, and assumably you're putting the Sprite in there because the carbonation will help fill some upper rumen for gas, that hole you're talking about.
Yep, absolutely.
And that is absolutely logical.
And then I will also tell you that we always put mineral oil in. I mean, not a lot, but we just kind of, and it's just one of those things over time you learn, but we just put a couple of shakes of mineral oil in every bucket because, just like Dale said, if it goes too far, then you cause bloat, and that's going to be the worst thing that can happen to you. And so mineral oil is not going to hurt things, but it will definitely try to keep one from bloating on you. At major shows, or at Texas major shows, you can't pump, but most of them you can drench. I think that keep it on stuff is probably one of the best supplements I have ever used. And I don't know what's in it. I don't ask. It looks like Kool-Aid to me. But, and again, I'm talking on 13 to 1,400 pound market steers. If you drench 2 of those in there 30 minutes before you're going to walk the ring, normally, I'm not saying every time because every animal's different. Normally, you can get that high upper feel that you're wanting. Again, when you can only drench, they're either going to have to drink the water or you're going to have to drench them down. And I don't know if y'all know how difficult it is to drench a bucket of water down a show steer or heifer, but it is not easy. It is doable.
Near impossible to get enough just water in them.
but it
increased fill.
Right. But I mean, we have done it, but it is not easy. But I do honestly believe in that. Keep it on. I think that works well. Now, I think it is one of those things, like I said, I think you need to try it at home on your calf because, again, I've had some that one worked. I've had some that it took 4. It just depends. But I do believe in that product. I do think it helps. And so those are things that we have found over the years that we had as our go-tos. I think hay is something that you can the one thing that people worry about in cattle deals is when you have a weigh-back. Well, hay weighs nothing. So if you keep hay in front of them, then that will help with upper fill a lot. And so again, I'm not saying feed your calf as a bale of alfalfa, but we're just talking about regular grass hay there. If they'll eat that or sorghum hay, that will help as well. And so those are, and I mean, that sounds basic and simple, but those are the things that we have found. Some people use beer, some people use like Coke to fill their stuff up with. I would caution you on all that because of drug tests, caffeine tests, alcohol tests, stuff like that. Sprite is non-caffeinated, and so that's why we normally use that, even at a jackpot show that doesn't have a drug test. But
and I think they're using it for the carbonation, so there's no reason to not go that direction.
Yeah, just on the safety, and like I said, there are different things you could use, but that one just safety precaution all the way around. Do you have any tricks of filling your Illinois State Fair Angus winning prodigy steers and things?
That mine is just as similar to the goats, and maybe I can simplify it a little bit. We will experiment at home, not with supplements or anything, but I will experiment with how much they're consuming, and if I know that I'm going to have them, I'm going to push pretty hard morning, noon, and night on feeding. I'm going to go ahead and a normal feeding that morning and see what they look like at noon. Those type of things, whether it's a goat or a steer. On the steer side, it was always push, 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 unless we were worried about a weigh-back. But outside of a weigh-back, it's consume as much as you can and get as much room and fill as you can, get as much water into them as you can. Again, not when we're in a weigh-back situation, and we will obviously account for that when we turn those weights in. So I'm with you, Ryan, and that keep it on. I don't know anything about it, but it's logical that it's something that's either fermenting in the rumen or causing some form of carbonation to fill that upper gas. And you talked about feeding not necessarily feeding a bunch of alfalfa hay, but the alfalfa, and again, you can't control how much it's going to ferment, but the alfalfa will cause fermentation, more rapid fermentation in the rumen and get more upper fill sooner. But like like you said, the Sprite, that maybe you could go a little too far. So it's a little playing with fire there, where the Coastal and that, I agree, weighs nothing. It's going to help with some of that fill. And it's going to help that, we got some friends in the background here. It's going to help with that rate of passage.
They want alfalfa.
They do want alfalfa, don't they? If I had something to throw at that little thing, I would, but I've got nothing. So in all honesty, we are increasing and decreasing feed, and usually full access to water plus drenching. So fluids we're pushing. So we're doing more of our adjusting on fill with our feed going into the show. But if I need fill last minute, we just came out of the ring and I finally got off of that goat or whatever. And I said, wow, he needs more fill, more body. And if we've got to go back in for division, when we get that goat out of class, I get him on the stand or in the pen. And if allowed, I will drench a lot of water. And that's going to increase the fill. It's just that's how we can get instant fill or very quick fill. From the standpoint of eating, it takes too long sometimes. So we will adjust by drenching water before we go in the ring if we need more. We'll adjust by pulling feed up to 3 days before if we need to bring that fill in a little bit. So those are the methods that I take. And I'm not saying that other people, and I know a lot of very, very intelligent people, including what Ryan's talking to you about there, that believe in other things. And I'm not saying that doesn't work. I just have to think through everything from a biological and anatomical sense. And it's hard for me to manipulate how that feed stuff and those supplements are going to move through that system outside of a lot of water dropping down and outside of fermentation, filling that hole that Ryan talks about. Ryan, maybe there's a name for it. Maybe you ought to make up one. So
I don't know.
You could invent that. I don't.
I've never in all these years. I've always just referred to it as like the pocket on this one's not full. Fix this.
And we usually talk about we need to drop more flank or we need to fill up high, and that up high is what I've always referred to. That hole under the loin behind the rib as far as where we're at. I think in the pig people, and I don't know what they're doing, Ryan. You'd have.
Yeah, I do not either. That's the thing. I can just give like what I think looks good, but I do not know what they use, what they don't use, etc.
So you realize I'm going back to your little bit of mineral oil. I like that idea because that's a kind of a safety net for you.
Safety, yeah, that's why we always.
So it would coat that rumen lining and almost in my mind, some of those microbes in there prevent them from causing any extra gas or functioning, basically, which would be self-defeating if you're wanting that upper fill. But if you're just putting a little bit in there and you've got a carbonated product that's going to take care of some of that, I don't know. It's all interesting to me. I haven't put that much thought into it. But I think in many situations, especially at these steer shows where you want those babies filled up and you can't use a pump, man, that's hard. I would use some Show Fresh H2O and hope they drink like crazy. I'd feed the crap out of them, and after I look at the ingredients of Keep It On, I might even use that.
Again, in terms of, we've been talking about water mainly, and we've talked about hay some and stuff and additives, but there, and I don't know what, like I said, I'm not sure. I know what I think looks good in a pig. I think they need to be like sheep and goats. I think the problem you run to in pigs is we get them so full that their underline starts to drop and they look more pus-gutted or pot-bellied, and that detracts from their silhouette or their profile. But I do know that, like, we want pigs that have that round rib shape and all of that, and we're going to talk about that at the end. And so I don't know what they do to get it, but I do know that in cattle you can also, and again, Dale's just going to freak out and die because this is the only time that I believe in supplements, actually. But beet pulp will help drop a flank a little bit. I truly believe that. I think if you can get them to eat it dry, it's even better, because then it's in there, and then when it mixes with the juices in the stomach, it expands. I think there are several additives that we have fed over the years. I can't even remember the names of them now but they're all kind of the same, just filling agents, and we only feed them. We feed beet pulp at home, but at shows there are several of those different filling agents that they're all on those websites, and I stretch and things like that, and I do think they help some. I don't think they help as much as the other things that I've talked about, and I will be honest with you, I think that liquids are easier to get more effective and faster results for, like, when you're heading into a show ring.
Yep. If we're a half hour out or an hour even before we go in the show ring, let's say 30 minutes out, or we're going back in for division, we need more fill. In a lamb or a goat, it's a drench gun, and if allowed in a steer, you're going to pull out the pump. That's just the only way you're going to get there in that amount of time, period. So you're going to be surprised, Ryan. We fed beet pulp every single day in our show steer project. And I think
we always have. And again, and like some animals will not eat it dry, but if they start and try it dry, and if they won't eat it dry, then normally they'll eat it wet. But if I could get them to eat it dry, that's what I do, because I think it's more effective. And that's just my opinion on that.
And I think that's a product that, relative to its mass, relative to we can expand the rumen, we can expand the intestines, we can do things with beet pulp that with anything, if we're feeding really hard and we jam that rumen super full every day, and we jam those intestines as full as we can, we get some stretch, And the more of that we can get, the easier it is to give them that illusion of just more body. And I think beet pulp, if you can get them to eat it, and sometimes it's going to be self-defeating because they just don't want to eat it. But if you can do that and get some of that in that diet and still keep your energy levels high enough for growth and putting on some finish, it's going to expand the room, and it's going to expand the large and small intestine. It's going to help in those areas considerably. And I don't even consider that a supplement. That's just feed.
Right. And I know we're getting long. And again, I'm sorry to the pig people because I just don't know what.
But if we called Fugate, he would give us 85 products to
we would be on here for another hour.
Center rib, lower flank, upper, below the pins, hip, maybe right down by the sheath. He could tell us what supplement to go right in those spots.
But some general things that I think that you need to, and I think this is just kind of common sense. We want them as full as we can until it detracts from other things. And I want you to think about this way. So when you go out and you eat a huge meal, or you're at the bar and you drink a ton of beer, when you get up to walk, do you walk as good as you normally do? Probably not. And so when we go so far on filling them up, I think it affects movement. And especially if they bloat, it's definitely going to affect their movement. But you can get to a point that you get them so full. And I have made this comment on the microphone more times than I remember. I said, I think we've got this one so full, it's starting to hamper this one's ability to move. And I do think that is a common sense saying that people need to think about, that they don't. But if you'll just relate it back to you as a human, if you eat too much or you drink too much, you probably don't move as good as you do normally.
I like that analogy. And I can assure you, in the goat side, if we get some of these goats that are maybe prone to wanting to push their top or their loin a little bit, if we get them too full, that's going to accentuate all of that. They're going to be worse about it. So we've just got to think of each animal as an individual. And Ryan said something at the very beginning. We need to do this experimenting at home, whether you take my philosophy on it and are primarily adjusting feed over a 3-day period for in terms of pushing or pulling back a little bit while on full water. I remember so many people, Ryan, I think it still happens today, that if they want to take belly off an animal, in few species do we want to do that right now, so it's probably not happening as much. But when we didn't want a lot of belly on them, we would pull water maybe even before we'd pull feed. And as soon as we pull water, we start to shrink up, dehydrate those muscles. Remember, muscles 80% water. We're going to fade away to nothing. Don't try to pull. If I want to take belly out of an animal, I shouldn't even talk about all these things. Some people are going to think I'm crazy. If I want to take belly out of an animal, I think there's some feed in their rumen and their intestine. The night before the show, I will blast them with water, hoping that speeds up the rate of passage a little bit and that empties them out actually long term, because that water is all going to be excreted. Hopefully the feed stuff is passed through a little bit quicker because they're not dried out, and it helps the digestive process.
And this is where they're going to think that I'm crazy, and that's perfectly fine or whatever. But as a judge, I'm just going to tell you that if an animal, regardless of species, is in the ring and obviously is loose in terms of having the shits or whatever you want to call it, loose stool, however, whatever, and it's evident and I notice it, then I always think, now what got us to this point? Like, did we try to fill them too much? Is their diet not right? Et cetera, et cetera. And so, again, that is a little bitty thing, but I'm telling you, it gets noticed.
And I'll tell you what I think, exactly like you. And my mind all of a sudden thinks, well, damn, why didn't they not adjust these animals at home to whatever they're wanting to give them at the show?
I mean, it's a negative thing, and that's the first thing that goes to my mind is like, what got us to this point right here?
And maybe it was just stress, and then that's possible.
And it could be, but
more times than not, it's because we're doing something drastically different right before the show than we did at home. And that is not a good idea. Think about it. You got the screaming shits. Do you feel real well?
No. And that's what I'm saying. And like, people don't think that gets noticed, but I'm telling you it does.
No,
and
it absolutely does.
It's just one of those things that goes through a judge's mind and stuff like that. But and the last thing that I will bring up on this, and we brought it up at the beginning, but I want to bring it up again. We talked about it affects their movement, affects their silhouette, because like we said, if it gets too low in terms of the belly, then that detracts from the lines and all that other stuff. I will also tell you that I love this round rib thing, and I'm a big fan of it, and I think it's cool. And again, I don't know if it's very practical or whatever. Dale has problems with it, and I get it. The other thing that I want to tell you on Phil is, like Dale said, the muscles, 80% of that is water. And so you have to keep them hydrated to keep those muscles popping. But think about this. If the belly sticks out farther than the ass, what is the visual there, Dale?
Ryan, you're talking about 90% of the heifers that walk in the ring today.
I'm asking you what
the
is the
visual is this is a big belly with a narrow ass.
Okay. And so again, I think that while I like this, and I think this is a trend, and all these things are good, I think if we go to the extreme, especially like he's saying in some of these heifers, I think sometimes it's to their detriment, because it makes them appear like they have less muscularity than what they do. So I'm just throwing that out there. Talk amongst yourselves, whatever.
I agree completely. It may give them a little more dimension on the profile and a little stouter look maybe from the profile, but we're going to get behind them probably and watch them or see them.
I don't know. I would say 90% of the shows you start on a rear view.
Yes.
And so I'm just throwing that out there for people to think about.
And I think that's a great point. The round rib, Ryan, I'm into there with you. I love a round rib. I think it adds to whatever that show ring look is that we have in our mind. It serves no functional purpose at all, but I'll tell you what, I am a sucker for round rib livestock across the species. And I don't know, we talk about round rib, and I think a lot of times we're talking as much maybe about Phil as truly a round rib bone. I know there are some that are naturally that way, and there's some that are very flat rib, but there's probably not as big a difference in the middle range as we think. And sometimes if we fill them up, it does give them that illusion to a certain degree. So that is an interesting one, and one that I will openly admit I'm a sucker for it, and it serves no functional purpose other than when we grab a hold of the top of those lambs and those goats, and your hand just spans across there, and you're touching the rib. It's not even muscle necessarily, but it just gives you that illusion of just a big old massive top. And a round rib usually means a shallower chest. And Ryan, don't we usually want the flank deeper than our chest floor? We do, but Mother Nature says the opposite. So
and I'm with you on Mother Nature saying the opposite, but I'm going to tell you that I am the Nazi, and that's probably going to get me hate mail. But anyway, I am a stickler, is what I should say, is if the chest floor is deeper than the flank, it throws off the whole silhouette. And one of my very best friends, he's just like you. He's like, he argues that with me, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm not saying you're not right. I'm telling you what I see. And what I see, when I see it, I really, 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 really don't like it.
It's not normal. We get that a little bit from the dairy industry. You got that big old udder down there in the flank, and they can always come up to the chest floor because the flank is so deep. And that triangle or that shape of a profile of the dairy cat, that is, I'm with you. I want a round rib. And one thing that I would have to say, if we truly have a more round ribbed animal, that chest floor is usually shallower. We just basically take and push that chest floor up. It rounds the rib up. It gives them a shallower side and a lot of things that we like. But again, not practical. In this deeper flank, we can talk about body fill, and they're consuming we can talk about a lot of things. It's aesthetic, and that's it. Mother Nature says we don't, that's not helping us anywhere, but I'm with you. I want to see it, even though I know it serves no functional purpose.
There you go.
I think this was a good topic.
I'm done now.
You're done now? You're not done.
I'm done now.
Because we have something else.
Well, no, I'm done with the topic. I'm glad that
I'm
glad a year and something later you finally agreed to do it. But yeah, okay.
I'm a little worried that I may have confused people more than helped them.
That's okay. I was here. It'll be fine.
Okay. And I'm being very sincere, guys. I'm going to adjust Phil with feed and last minute with water, but feed over a couple days, water more closely to the time we get in the show ring. Question and answer. First one comes from Becky. I think we've had one like this maybe. Our county fair is struggling with a lot of beef animals that are coming to the fair as unmanageable. What are your thoughts on dealing with these issues? I don't know.
Trust me, I judge lots of county fairs, and I see all the unmanageable animals, and I'm going to be, and I am not trying to make life harder or anything like that. I will tell you that I think that I know lots of county fairs that have called for, they give you like 4 dates and you have to make 2 of them where you come and you either have to do a weigh-in or a practice show or stuff like that. I think that can probably help. I think the biggest help would be, and this is not necessarily a county agent's or an FFA ag teacher's job, but if they knew that there was a problem or they suspected that one of their students or 4-H agents was having an issue with one, maybe a little one-on-one TLC with that kid and that animal. And again, there's only so many hours in the day, and their job is literally supposed to be 9 to 8 to 3:15 or 9 to 5 or whatever. And I understand that, but you're asking for solutions, and there are 4-H leaders that are volunteers and stuff like that. I think the hardest thing is knowing beforehand which one the kids that are having problems are. But other than that, I really don't know what to tell you.
I think it's always probably been an issue. Maybe it's a little more of an issue now than it was at one time. But yeah, I'm going to just go with what you said. I'm going to keep it simple. Go with Ryan's answer. Period. The next one's a little bit.
Thanks.
The next one's a little longer question. But I know that you've probably I've encountered this, and I'm sure you have. And I think we've even talked about it once. But I will read it as is, a little confusing, but I'll try to paraphrase maybe at the end. Listening to your podcast about show etiquette. What happens when you're a judge and you hear a parent say something about the top 5? For instance, this kid's son was chosen for grand champion steer, and he didn't like the choices for overall 3rd through 5th place. We had a judge at the county fair call the comment out. I was appalled by the comment the parent made. I knew who made the comment without even hearing the comment. Next, you judge the heifer show. The same kid is in there. As a judge, do you guys find it hard to keep those comments not in your head? There, I got through it.
And I am very confused.
I can paraphrase. So you just picked your top 5. The kid that wins, the parents are complaining about what you picked for 3rd through 5th, that you did a terrible job.
So the parents of the kid I use grand overall are complaining about the rest of the top 5.
Yes, and you hear it.
And I hear them, and I know that it's the kid of the person.
Yes, and then they come back in for the heifer show.
Okay. And she's asking, is that hard to affect the placings? Well, I will say this. I don't think it would be wise.
I don't think it's going to help the place.
I don't think it's going to help things, but
you're going to say you're going to block it out and just place them as they are. Well, good job.
Well, and I'm going to say that because it wasn't the child making that comment, it would be easier for me to do that. I find it more difficult when the child has a bad attitude or to block those things. It is harder for me when it is the child that has a bad attitude to block those things out in future times. When it is a parent, a fitter, a breeder, whatever, again, it doesn't look good for that child, but that is also not the person in the ring exhibiting that animal. So I probably could do it real easy if it's a parent. Now, I'm not going to say that I probably, if I see that parent at the backdrop again, like, so did you like this 3rd through 5th better?
I can see you doing that too.
Oh, trust me. I talk smack back. I have no problems. talking. They're going to talk smack to me. I talk smack back. I'll never forget one time. And this is there was no next show or whatever, but this was a very prestigious jackpot show, and Kid won, and Kid also had third overall. And the fitter was mad that the third overall didn't win the show because that one had not been beat. And so I told Sid Fitter he could get out of the picture if he was that upset about it.
Great. Just great. Oh my. Okay, I'm going to say that I it's going to be in the back of my mind, but I'm with Ryan. If it's an attitude issue or a comment from the exhibitor, it probably hinders them more than the parent. If the parent's making the comment, I sometimes just feel sorry for their child.
Me too.
The final question comes from Tina. Hello.
You picked the worst questions.
I took the last three that were submitted. I didn't dig real deep. I thought these are okay. Tina, how do we find out where you guys will be judging? Would love to watch both of you judge either together or separately, but I
No, you do not. No, you do not want us to watch us judge together. It's a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea.
Oh gosh.
I don't think we have anything on the schedule together anytime soon that I remember.
I don't think so. I mean, Ryan, he's going to just go out anytime in the summer and you can find him. I'm not going to be out.
And I'm going to be honest. Like I get these messages a lot, and I get these with like people want me to publish my judging schedule. And I'm just going to tell you that I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be difficult or anything like that. If I saw somebody post their judging schedule on social media, I would have very bad thoughts about that person. And so I'm not going to do that. It's just not going to happen. Now, there are lots of people that when I judge shows, they make up flyers, my name's on them. Sometimes I share them if I remember to, stuff like that. But for me to post a list of shows that I would really make fun of somebody that did that. And yeah, that's not going to happen.
That makes perfect. I'm lucky to get the show on my calendar and remember that I have a show, let alone publicize it ahead of time.
But I will say this for those of you listening: the next show that Dale and I have together, if there is another one, we will try to announce it on the podcast. How about that? I've
got a couple texts about them asking if you and I schedules are available, and I probably lost the text by now. So if you're out there listening, please text me again. It's got pushed back to the back, and these were shows.
He does not relay these to me very well.
Oh, sometimes I do. Sometimes, but there are a couple. I don't remember where they were from, but there were a few asking they were basically asking, give us a date that you were both available. They're trying to be very flexible about it.
Sweet Jesus.
And my problem is I don't know what I'm doing until 2 or 3 days before.
Dale doesn't know what he's doing.
No,
4 days in advance.
I don't. I just don't. So it's hard for me to commit a lot of times way out there because there's just something's going to go wrong here at home or something. Things just change too much.
This is why Tara gets to judge more of Dale's shows than Dale gets to judge them because he just sends her. But
I will get out and do a few, and I enjoy judging with Ryan just because you can be assured it won't be the same champions.
You're right, but
sometimes it is. But
yeah,
I think
there you go.
I think that's all. This was a little longer, but I'm glad. I'm going to go back and look through that list of topics. I bet you've got several good ones on there. I will.
Before we sign out, we're winding down the end of the BTRJLA year, and you can't sign up for this year, but you can sign up for 2023. So please go to btrjla.com and sign up for 2023. So you're a member come January 1. You've got Denver Cattlemen's Congress, and those are both major shows. They're going to be triple points. So you want to be a member from January 1. And I want to give a shout out to our corporate sponsors for 2022, Showcoat Solutions, Leonard Truck and Trailer, JH Cattle, Mini Herefords, and the Mini Mafia publication, and Brock Farms Angus Cattle. And they're having a sale again on October 17th. So that's our corporate sponsors. We thank y'all very much for your support. And I will be contacting you about 2023 and soon. So hopefully you're pleased with all of your things.
And listeners, if you're contemplating signing up for the BTRJLA as an exhibitor, wait until you see the hundreds of awards that are going to be given out that are so...
You mean over 2,000 awards?
Okay, thousands, lots of awards. And I've organized all of these awards. It's I've been going day and night to keep it all straight.
Yes, he has. He has done them.
Until next week, be safe.
Y'all come back now, you hear?